Thanks for logging on to myfoxhurricane.com. Still early on in the season, so just kind of looking back or looking ahead to the names we will be using as we undoubtedly get some of these tropical systems during the year. Alberto, Beryl, Chris, Debbie, Ernesto, but at least for now, things are quiet. Now, as we go through the month of June, the areas that we're watching, the favored areas for development, they're across really the Western Caribbean and then up into the Gulf of Mexico. Quite often this time of the year, you get these cold fronts that come down across the southeast end. And we call Florida, the Gulf of Mexico, the graveyard of fronts this time of the year, because the fronts that come down, they don't give us any cooler air, but they kind of stall out over the state and they become that area that we can see some development. We see sometimes these areas of low pressure along those frontal boundaries, and those start to form into tropical systems. And that's what can quite often steer these in that northeasterly direction and then up over the state, also down across the Western Caribbean. Quite often you have the ideal conditions, warm waters, and then that lower wind shear, and then those systems get pulled to the north because of these troughs across the eastern U.S. or those fronts, and it kind of draws these systems to the north. Right now, things are quiet, but you look at some of the ingredients. We've got this very warm water. These are looking at the sea surface temperature anomaly. So we're looking whether the water is cooler or warmer than average. And what you notice as you look across the entire Atlantic, down through the Caribbean, up into the Gulf of Mexico, it is all very warm waters. We're looking at many of these locations at water temperature in the upper 80s, in some cases even some lower 90s in some locations. So the ingredients, they're starting to come into place. But at this time of the year, you're typically not looking way out into the Atlantic because we've got a lot of that dry Saharan air, that dust in the atmosphere tends to inhibit these systems from developing. So again, the area that we're watching, it's across the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. It's all quiet across the Gulf of Mexico right now, but as you look down across the Western Caribbean, you are starting to see some moisture. Now, it doesn't look like at this point anything's really going to develop with this, but we've got that deep tropical moisture sitting down to our south. Remember what I just said, it tends to get pulled to the north, and that does look like what's going to happen as we go through the next couple of days. A lot of this moisture is going to get pulled to the north and then just kind of move right over the state. So while we're not talking about tropical development, we are talking about tropical showers working their way over Florida. And that's actually some very beneficial rain that'll be working its way over the state over the next several days. It looks like through the rest of this week, heading into the weekend, heading through Father's Day, and then possibly into the beginning parts of next week, we could be talking about more rounds of showers. And at this point, that is welcome rain. But as you look at some of these rainfall totals down to our south, 8 to 12 inches of rain. I know this is overall weak, but that could cause some flooding issues. So we will continue to watch this. But as far as the tropics are concerned, the tropical development, that looks like that will stay quiet over the next several days. We'll keep you updated right here on myfoxhurricane.com.